Audience. We were kind of having the show before the show because we are going to be talking about some kids today.
It's time to
And
rock and roll, right?
so, Don, It's Wonderful Wednesday. Here we are, you and me, pal.
Happy Wednesday. Always glad to see you.
Yes, and as we were saying, Don and I are a lost cause as far as the left converting us, but they're going after the children, and in way more in more than one way, and in more than one. Well, I'll just say in more than one way. So, Don, you brought this story to us. You want to take off with it?
Sure, absolutely. And I think one overarching theme to remember is it's always been the strategy of Marxists to destroy the family and attack the children. And this current crop that we're growing here in the United States is no different. Although I got to say, this was kind of a unique angle. And I found this article. It was Abigail Schreier who wrote a book. And the title of the book, I think, is Social Emotional Learning. And what's happened over the last several years, probably over the last decade, is increasingly in the public school system, we see these psychologists taking up camp and teaching teachers how to teach social emotional learning. So,
No, let me interrupt a second. The book
mhm,
is Bad Therapy:
ah,
Why the Kids Aren't Growing Up.
right, right.
And yeah, and it's discussing the social emotional learning.
Right. So they're constantly diagnosing these kids with all kinds of problems, making the assumption that all of them have been damaged by the time that they get to school. And so it kind of reminds me, we were talking about this earlier, it kind of reminds me of what they did with sex education several decades ago. The more they talk about it, the more they bring it up, the more they increase the problem. And that's exactly what we see here. So they've been doing this over the last 10 years in all of these schools. And what do we see that correlates with that? We see an increase in teen suicide, teen depression, all kinds of problems. So this new industry, I'll call it, is it's creating a problem, then providing a solution to the problem. In much the same way that that the race hustlers have done. We create a problem with our CRT and our white privilege and our BLM and all that other stuff, and then they provide the solution to the problem by teaching this stuff. So very interesting. I thought the correlation between the two.
This, as I was reading this article, it educated me so much more at a deeper level of what is going on in the schools, and to imagine. I had no idea that schools are being offered like a $50 million grant if they will implement social emotional learning, and the grant is for behavioral health or health, and to getting more therapies. And in reading this story that's out of catholicvote.org, um, talking about mental health crises that are happening in schools, and to see, like she says in here, she says, social emotional learning is the curricular juggernaut that devours billions in education spending each year and more than 8% of teacher time. And and the thought is that all kids are not able to learn because they've had some sort of trauma in their life. So
So
they're now looking at every single child that they're damaged, they can't learn, and we have got to have therapies. And yet, in the very beginning of this article, she says that the vast majority of kids are in school where therapists and non-therapists diagnose kids liberally and offer in-school counseling and mental health and wellness instruction. And by 2022, 96% of public schools offered mental health services to students. Well, when you and I were in school, Don, we had a counselor, right?
right, right, a counselor.
A counselor. And it really wasn't much, but I believe probably the really troubled kids that went there. And now they are wanting a lot of counselors, whether they're actually therapists or not. And and this is also including this article, as far as what I read, did not mention medication,
Mhm.
but that's a whole
Well,
nother
well,
part of
the two are correlated. We all know that Ritalin is used by far way and above to the degree that it should be used, and the same is true with all the psychotropic medications. So
it.
you have this evil, industry that's all working together. I mean, the more clients, quote unquote, you can get, the more money you make. And the same thing is true as pharmaceuticals. The same thing is true of the psychotherapy industry. I mean, they don't make more money to get people out of counseling. They make more money when to get people in counseling. And it's become a growth industry within the school. And 96%. You mean to tell me that in the last 10 years, all of a sudden we've gone from like roughly 0 to 96% of kids need counseling?
Right. Right. This is talk about screwing up kids. And, education is reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's not about what gender you want to be. And it's not about so many of the things that they're wanting to, she said that one presentation at this conference that she attended focused on embedding this social, economical, emotional learning into math, during which kindergarten level exercises revealed the solution has no wrong answers. This is no wrong answers. Everybody gets a trophy. And that's how you end up with snowflakes,
Well, and
people
this
that
too,
cannot handle any type of adversity.
this is the grooming process for many things. This is how they groom you into the whole LGBTQ thing. This is how they groom you into anything. There's no such thing as right and wrong. This is how they groom you into doing whatever feels good. This is how we groom you into being this lazy generation, mentally depressed people that they're creating, and you see it in the statistics. Depression is through the roof, suicides through the roof, suicidal ideations through the roof, drug use, and I mean legal drugs, prescribed drugs use amongst the youth are through the roof. And it's all to feed this industry. It is a really evil thing they're doing. And you see it in the language. Whenever there's liberals, they always have fancy language. Think about Marxism, think about George Orwell. So identity development, emotional management, supportive relationships, responsible decision making. This is the language of Marxists, right? Anytime you don't know what they mean, and you're an intelligent person, you're talking to a communist, because it's all about sowing confusion. If it's clear and easy to understand, that's not good, because they use the language to confuse you and make it so you can't think. If we can't communicate, we can't think. And if we can't think, that's the soil for Marxism to grow. And that's what this is all about.
Well, it is. So, and it is the taxpayers' money getting spent on this. So in California, Schreier notes, a new law has school districts billing Medicaid for mental health services provided to children in schools themselves.
It never ends.
So the outpouring of government help, hello, I'm from the government, I'm here to help you. That's the worst thing ever.
Yeah, and just like the business of chopping kids up, you'll never get out of that therapy. Once you start down that path, you're never going to be fixed. You're always going to need drugs. You're always going to need some new solution. You're always going to need counseling. And for these psychologists and psychiatrists who previously were unemployable, now they got a permanent job with the government.
Well, that's exactly right. They do. And then, so apparently in January of this past year, Biden's secretaries, as I mentioned earlier, the Department of Health and Human Services and Education, Xavier Becerra and Miguel Cardona, wrote to U.S. governors to share a new funding opportunity for states to help tackle the mental health crisis we're facing and expand access to healthcare services, including mental health services. But you've got to, of course, sign up for a $50 million grant to the state.
Well, it's like Ronald Reagan said once upon a time: the scariest words in the English language are I'm from the government and I'm here to help."
Yes, exactly. And this is based on school-based health centers through Medicaid and the Children's Health Insurance Program, CHIP, Well, I think CHIP is also part of the school lunch program.
Mhm,
Um, I think it is. Don't quote me, and maybe some of our
mhm,
viewers can correct me on that.
mhm.
Um,
But that
it's
yeah, that's another one of those programs that's designed to be here forever. Has anything been fixed since they put in the school lunch program and the war on poverty back in the 60s? No, it just expands.
no.
And that's the purpose. That's their business model. And I'll just answer Bobby Richardson. I see your question here. How in the hell are kids going to take care of themselves and the parents are gone? They don't need parents because the government's the parents. That's us, the taxpayers. That's the
Just
design.
just remember, the government wants to take care of you from cradle to grave. And these types of programs are how they are able to implement that and not have independent thinkers and frankly screwing people up. And the Biden administration is making a claim that students who receive their healthcare services at school have better academic outcomes. And I call bull BS to that.
I love to see
This
proof
is
of that.
this is more of the government interfering with the family network.
Well, you wouldn't know in Oregon anyway because they don't have standards in Oregon, remember? The governor got rid of
No.
measuring it, so you would never know if it's better or not. And we all know, just look at the data. If you rank the Western countries around the world in terms of educational achievement, we've been falling for decades. I'm not sure exactly where we rank, but I'm pretty sure it ain't the top 20. So the very things that they should be going to school to get, the three R's, what are they getting? They're getting CRT, they're getting BLM, they're getting white privilege, and now we get to add psychological counseling on top of it. Everything but the three R's.
Yes, and something else that she points out, she said there's an ethical problem inherent in providing therapy in schools, one that revolves around the concept of dual relationships, which are off limits for therapists, in private practice in the outside world. So, school counselors, school psychologists, and social workers enjoy a dual relationship with every kid who comes to see them. They know all the kids' best friends. They may even treat a few of them with therapy. They know the kids' parents, their friends' parents, and they report not to a kid's parents, but to the school administration.
Oh,
So
and
think about that. Your kid is getting some type of therapy at school, and you don't know a thing about it.
I was gonna say, I'm sure they don't ask the parents first.
No, I'm sure they don't. And, she also has another book that focused on the rapid onset of gender dysphoria in girls. And
Mhm.
Schreier says she has been inundated with parent stories of school counselors encouraging a child to try on a variant gender identity, even changing the child's name without telling the parents.
Of course,
And
it's a tool. It's a
so
tool for grooming. That's essentially what this
it
is.
is. It absolutely is grooming.
Mhm.
And and not for a good thing. This is not for the good of the of people, of society as a whole at all.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting they're pushing this stuff at a time when public school enrollment is dropping precipitously. Um, and when you read the data around why, or you read the reasons why public school administrators give for enrollment dropping, is things like less kids, parents having less kids, people moving out of state, economy. It's everything but the real reason, which is people don't want this stuff for their kids. And those who have the means and who are engaged are pulling them out, whether it be private school, whether it be homeschool or some hybrid. That's what they're doing. So we're creating a two-tier society, really. The one tier is going to be kids who are raised with morality, taught how to read, write, and how to think. Another
Mhm.
tier, kids whose parents can't or won't remove them from this evil system, and those kids are going to be stuck at the bottom. That's what we're creating.
Well, they are. And, so along with that, on the topic of children, we have another story from Catholic Vote as well, and it's from the New York Times. Social media moms expose minor daughters to predation. And this is so a recent New York Times report acknowledged a disturbing trend of mothers running social media accounts featuring pictures and videos of their minor daughters with the intention of seeking fame, only to become noticed by thousands of male pedophiles.
Mhm.
So, parents, grandparents, when you're thinking about posting those pictures of the little granddaughters,
Mhm.
unfortunately, that's where we're at today.
Mhm.
And so, seeking social media stardom for their underage daughters, mothers post images of them on Instagram. The author summarized the accounts draw men sexually attracted to children, and they sometimes pay to see even more. Um, this is pedophilia. This is sick, quite frankly. People
Mhm.
that want to do this, and yet some of the things that are being taught to kids are to show them that this, some people, some areas are trying to make this to be the norm
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
okay.
And the thing is, for those who might be, there are those who are doing this who have sick ideas, no question about it. But then there are those parents who just maybe are naive and not understanding that even if you didn't have the pedophilia side of this, what are you teaching your kids by putting them in these social media settings that their self-image has to be dependent upon what other people think of them? It's a dangerous path to go down.
Well, you're absolutely right. It's, you don't need to compare yourself to somebody else or what their opinion truly matters. It is on our own, to a child. Think back, take ourselves way back, right? And the social pressures, children today
Mhm.
have so much more social pressures than we did
Sure.
as kids, and because of social media.
Mhm.
There's just so much more. But think back, you want to be, of course, liked by your peers. Who doesn't want
Mhm.
that? But now to have somebody write, I mean, kids are
Mhm.
committing suicide
Yeah.
because somebody wrote something bad about them on social
Or
media.
they didn't get enough likes or as many likes as their friends, and people are getting crushed by that, particularly the young who haven't had an opportunity to develop self-esteem yet. It's just a dangerous place to be, and more parents gonna have to be more aware of that. It's just not a good thing to do.
And in here is a headline that says Planned Parenthood opposes social media restriction bill protecting children. Of course
Oh,
they do.
shocking.
Of course they do. You know, so this is this is pretty bad. The large audiences boosted by men can benefit the families, the Times found. The bigger followings look impressive to brands and bolster chances of getting discounts, products, and other financial incentives, and the accounts themselves are rewarded by Instagram's algorithm with greater visibility on the platform, which in turn attracts more
Mhm.
followers. So, we can speak to that about captive
Mhm.
audience. We used to have thousands of followers that we reached every day. I remember David, Kevin, and I, talking about this. Whoa, look at all these people from Asia are watching us, on here. And all of a sudden one day it's like the light switch happened and the algorithm was changed.
Mhm.
And they're going, oh no, we don't want anybody seeing, here getting educated,
Mhm. Yeah,
hearing some other alternative opinions.
yeah. The Orwellian switch was flipped.
Yeah, and and one pedophile wrote in a Telegram message, "I'm so glad for these new moms pimping their daughters out." I mean, so there are predators. While, you're not a predator and I'm not a predator, but there are those out there
Mhm.
that are just searching and spending time doing this. Instagram is owned by Meta
Mhm.
Platforms and run by Mark Zuckerberg.
Mhm.
And yet Zuckerberg isn't, I don't know that he's doing anything about this.
Well,
Where Elon Musk has shut stuff down.
mhm.
He has done a lot to shut things down. In fact, in a hearing, Zuckerberg stood and apologized to families whose children were
Mhm.
victimized. when he was testifying at a congressional hearing about Instagram's assisting pedophiles in accessing inappropriate sexual content.
Well, if you're not a moral person, what's the penalty for doing wrong and what's the reward for doing right? The reward for doing this is high, and the penalty for doing it is low. So unless you have a morality bar, and clearly he doesn't, you just keep right on rolling. So he said he's sorry. I didn't hear anything about any penalties. I didn't hear anything about him helping out the families that this stuff happened to. Uh, I'm sorry is nice, but that's like kind of the starting point. Um, nothing.
Well, it is the starting point. You're absolutely right there. That's the starting point, but did he do anything to fix that by any means? That part I don't know.
No, and what it's done is it's lowered the bar so much. It's made it so much easier to do wrong. You think about once upon a time when you had to go to the red light district to do these kinds of things, and that was a hurdle for the vast majority of people. They just weren't going to go there and risk it. Now there's like zero risk of that. So even the person who is trying to do right can't avoid the temptation, and then they become addicted, and that stuff is an addiction. There's no question about it. There's people who can't, once they get into it, once they get into the porn, just like drugs, they just can't stop doing
Yeah.
it. Alcoholism, tobacco, same kind of a thing.
Yes, it is. And and speaking about children, and right now the border is a huge,
Mhm.
huge deal. Here is a story that I've just posted that is from Just the News. State attorneys general say more than 85,000 children are lost at the border. They are asking Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, the fellow who's just been impeached and needs to be removed from office. And they're also asking the FBI Director Christopher Wray to provide information on when the children were last seen and what safeguards are in place to ensure they are placed with family members. You know, when it was under Trump, when he was president, they were doing DNA testing of children that were coming across the border with a person. They
Mhm.
were doing DNA testing to confirm that they are related. And if they were not related, they were removing the children from out of that situation. And you know what? We have no idea. I could certainly imagine, and they're
Mhm.
not very good thoughts at all, but we have no idea, you know, with people, little kids coming across, and it can be with a man or a
Mhm.
woman. Women are not immune to this either.
Mhm.
Um, Although I think they'd probably not be so inclined, but
Mhm.
they're not immune to it.
Right.
And so, by law, the Department of Health and Human Services is responsible for keeping these children safe when they arrive. That's from the attorneys general said in their letter. That responsibility includes reuniting children with family or placing them with a sponsor who will protect them from trafficking and exploitation.
Mhm.
But that department is not living up to its responsibilities, and the cost of that failure is tens of thousands of missing children.
The evil of this border, um, its tentacles extend into so many areas that you can hardly keep count. You have the child trafficking, you have the fentanyl, you have the drug lords, you have the gangs. Um, it's just where does not to mention a potential terrorists. Um,
Mhm.
and we've got what, I don't know how many millions they've come across in the last 3 years. It's some crazy number. Um, and a federal government completely unwilling to do its job.
Yeah, I mean, losing 85,000 kids is like losing the entire population of Sioux City. That's the Iowa Attorney General, Brenna Bird. So, that person led a coalition along with Mississippi Attorney General Lynn Fitch and Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes, saying this is just not acceptable.
And
And I have to agree. So there are 21 other attorneys general demanding that the Biden administration immediately locate and protect these kids. You know, I've been reading more and more stories about child trafficking. You know, you hear about it in the news when we're talking about the border, about them being sold to slavery, sold for sex. And there seems to be anymore these days an insatiable appetite for this from people. The predators, it seems like, have just come out of the woodwork. Am I wrong,
Well, no,
Don?
not at all. And there's just like I said, there's just no end to the horrors associated with this border. And by now, I'm sure everyone's heard about the University of Georgia student. And it's just amazing to watch the press do everything it possibly can to avoid telling the story like it is. So instead of this being a story of an illegal immigrant raping and killing this poor girl, the story is of a runner being attacked and how women who are jogging need to be more careful. I mean, are you kidding me?
Right. Right, absolutely. You know, yeah, it's all her fault, you
Right.
know. So we have the 22-year-old Georgia nurse you just mentioned.
Mhm.
A 2-year-old Maryland child was killed by an illegal alien from El Salvador.
Mhm.
A 14-year-old Louisiana teenager was raped at knife point, and another man was repeatedly stabbed during a robbery by an illegal alien from Honduras.
And
And these are just the stories that we're hearing about.
and then it's just
And I can
run
tell
of the
you
mill.
that there's a lot more that we're
Oh yeah,
not.
then it's just a run of the mill drunk driving, right? DUIs and people getting killed in drunk driving accidents, right?
Well, the vehicles getting stolen, the houses getting broken into, you know, that stuff kind of goes on and on. But, you know, something else with this border is the story from the Epic Times. The former Panama border chief, he says the UN is behind the chaos at the Mexican border. I'm going to paste that story here because I want our audience to be able to. Uh, Laurie says this will be the last night of captive audience. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah,
That's funny, Laurie.
we've been captured.
Oh my God. You know, we're just talking about the stories that we get from the news, right? But we decided tonight to talk about kids and the
And
border.
we thought it was a light night.
Oh boy, oh boy. So Panama's former Senafront, he's the border chief,
Mhm.
director, says the UN and its nonprofit partners made mass migration worse when they moved into his country. And can tell you, I've seen the videos. Laura Logan is bringing attention to it. Michael Yon has been bringing attention to it for years. You know, he flies a drone and you see what's going on down at the Darien Gap. Well, this is the fella who is, you know, what used to be in charge of Panama's border. And he said during a February 22nd interview that he saw a jump in migration in 2016 at the same time that more
Mhm.
NGOs, non governmental organizations, moved into Panama.
Mhm.
And Michael Yon has got so much video. If you follow him, he's in Telegram, he's on Twitter, and if you follow him, he's flies a drone and he goes, "Okay, this is a Chinese camp,
Mhm.
you know, and this is who made this camp." And we're talking, they're not just little fly by night tent cities. They have made some substantial camps there for the people, the tens of thousands of people that are coming over there. And so he said that increase corresponded with the UN's Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration, their meeting that they had in 2016.
Well,
2 years later, 152 nations, including Panama, voted in favor of the agreement to manage global migration. The U.S. voted against it. And we saw in the European Union, because they have no borders. Once you get into one of the EU countries, there's no more borders. You can just go to any. They have been infiltrated by citizens from other nations that have no want, need, or desire to integrate into their culture.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what is now happening here under the Biden
And
administration.
that's the goal. I mean, the United Nations, I suspect that's been the goal from the beginning, at least from the
Yeah.
intellectual elite, going clear back to Woodrow Wilson, who started the whole thing, was to form one world government. If you're going to have one world government, you need to have a borderless society to do it. So this aligns beautifully with what they're trying to accomplish, and that's the elimination of borders. And we've been very fortunate. We've been protected by two oceans, and heck, our neighbor to the north even speaks the same language. And the neighbor to the south at least has the same Judeo-Christian background. Think about those poor Europeans, where that's not the case. And you've got multiple languages. If you don't have a common language, you are in deep trouble in terms of running a country. I mean, that's been the source of the problem with the Ottoman Empire, all of that stuff going way back. I think I read where in World War One, the officers in the military had to learn basic commands in 14 different languages. Now, how in the world are you going to win a war when you're commanding people speaking 14 different languages? It just sows confusion. Um, and that's what the one world government crowd wants here. They had to be very strategic and very slick in terms of how they've done it. But by golly, they figured out a way to do it through the Biden administration, and they're getting it done.
Well, they are. They are getting it done. And, I just can't thank Texas enough for everything that they're doing to stem the flow, and now the flow is gone over towards California.
Uh-huh.
And,
Well, I'll tell you one thing.
until,
Abbott may wind up being one of the heroes at the end of the day. It was brilliant
yes,
sending those people to the northeastern sanctuary cities, because now, because these people are unable to think, they can't see to the end the result of this stuff, but to bring it to their doorstep so they can feel it was brilliant. They're only getting a fraction of what we see in the border states, and they are screaming so loud, and they should be screaming loud. They're putting immigrants in like 3 and 4 star hotels. They're camping in the streets. They're destroying the school systems, the medical system, crimes through the roof. And now they're responding to it. I even heard the mayor of New York was, trying to defend sanctuary cities. He's going to wind up getting rotten fruit thrown at him before this is over.
yes, and I'll tell you, they're calling the federal government. We need more money to help these people. And so, oh, just give us the money and we're going to take over hotels and kick the veterans out, you know, for them to stay in. I'll tell you, I agree with you. That was a very smart move, is send it to their neighborhood 100%. But it's also smart to put up the barrier and going, we don't have to take this.
No.
And their new law, I believe, is going to get enacted in March. I haven't really heard, but because Texas had passed a law that would make it that they could arrest people that are entering this country illegally, that enter into Texas. And so I like Lori's comment there. I may be wrong, but Texas may be the new USA capital, just my opinion, right? No kidding. No
They went from
kidding.
Philadelphia to DC. Maybe it needs to move a little further south.
Yeah. So it is crazy, but it is affecting all of us. What it is finally, everybody's waking up to the fact that all of our states are border states. It's not just down south anymore. We are all border states. And it's atrocious of what is happening across our country. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we've got to, hey, Trump is winning and winning and winning and winning despite the courts and what's going on. He is still winning. Yes, it's costing him a lot of money, which is why we all should continue supporting him and donating to him and donating to the causes to help him pay.
Remember all the noise the left made when Trump was saying, let's build a wall? And they were losing their minds and how evil it is and how racist that is. I think I saw a poll that said 70% of Americans want a wall.
Yeah, they were quibbling over a few billion. And look at how many billion we've sent to Ukraine.
Oh, no kidding. A wall is
right?
peanuts. And the thing that makes me laugh is you'll hear these people actually try to make the argument that walls don't work. That is like
Right.
insane on the face of it. If walls don't work, then we shouldn't have prisons. Prisons have walls. They seem to work pretty good, right? Uh, the East
The Great Wall of China is very
Great Wall of
effective.
China that really worked. The East in Berlin that worked really well, right? Uh, Walls
In
work.
Israel, it
In
works.
Israel works. And they will argue, oh, yeah, it's not 100%. A small percentage are going to get out, but we don't need 100% to be successful.
No, we don't. No, we don't. And we have border entries,
Mm-hmm.
and people can come through the
Mm-hmm.
entries, no, and nowhere else.
Plus,
You know,
yeah, just
it's not like, no, they can't come across.
and plus, there's the bully pulpit of the commander in chief. If you had a commander in chief who just said, you're not welcome if you're illegal, and we're going to enforce the law, that will cause the drop by itself. When Trump was in office, we only had a fraction of this going on, and he never
Yes.
got the wall that he wanted. He didn't need it because he had the stature and the and the moral guts to say it. We don't have that. We have a guy who got in office and the next day reversed it, and we've gotten exactly the result that you would have predicted.
Yes, we did. Sadly, we did. And there's more and more cry to turn back that clock,
Mhm.
use the pen and the paper, and put Trump's border policies back in
I mean,
place.
yeah.
You know,
This might be
so
the first election we've ever had where the economy was not the number one uh, driver. It's probably going to be the border.
I think it is the border, and it needs to be, because the crime is getting rampant, and the effects on every community's resources. They're all feeling that financially,
Mhm.
not just financially, but the police departments and your sheriff's departments and everything, for what's been going on and what's allowed to be going on at the
And the
border.
thing is, it's happening in blue cities too. I mean, that might be, as terrible as it sounds, that might be the best thing that comes out of it. They are taking traditional blue geographies and possibly turning them red.
I hope. Let's pray.
Mm.
Let's pray that that's what happens. So, hey, on some good news, Trump has been appealing and whatnot, and he got a partial approval of a partial stay on an appeal for the New York case. And he and his sons are allowed to remain running their company and all that. And he's working apparently to get $100 million bond to file the appeal on that 464 million. But he might have to pay that whole $464 million in order to appeal that. But so he's making some headway, to go a couple steps forward and one step back, unfortunately, and they keep attacking him. And Laura Trump has officially launched her bid for the RNC co-chair.
Mhm.
And there is a meeting that is going to be, the meeting is in Texas, in Houston, on March 8th. The RNC will have its leadership election March 8th. And Lara Trump is running for co-chair. I had an opportunity of seeing her and meeting her here in Oregon, and what a delight. I've also had the opportunity to be with her at another event I went to back in Florida.
Mhm.
And what a delight. What a wonderful, intelligent woman. And I think that she will do really, really well as the co-chair. Of course, the Trump is wanting North Carolina GOP chair Michael Whatley to replace McDaniel, and we're going to have to see how the RNC members vote. But I would hope that the RNC members will support the leader of our party, which is Donald J. Trump, whether they like him or not.
Well,
Because our ultimate goal is to defeat the Democrats. We've got to increase our numbers in the House and the Senate,
mhm.
and everywhere else across this state or nation,
What?
state and nation. And we need to there was a position, I don't remember now, but a state had asked the RNC for money and they were denied money. Otherwise, we would have had a majority in the Senate. It was a Senate seat, I recall, was
Mhm.
lost. And so that's part of the RNC's job, is to help Republicans get elected. And, yes, you have to weigh, is it possible for that person to get elected? You can't just throw money after a bad candidate being in a place that's 30 degrees or 30 points, Democrat. Some things, you just can't put the money in. But so I'm excited to see the reforming of the RNC at the leadership. Absolutely. And speaking of that, somebody had mentioned earlier, McConnell
Yes.
is has decided to step down. That will be in November.
Mhm.
Personally, I wish it was Friday. I wish it was Friday. Just take out the week, or it could be tomorrow. Let's go out on leap year, right? The 29th of February. And and then on Monday, or maybe 2 weeks, they have an election for a new minority Senate leader, because it needs to happen.
Well, yeah.
And I'm sorry that um, he is waiting until November. I think his time has come.
Well, it's been a real problem for the Republican Party to have these McConnell type people who, who really hold the party back, or at least hold the role of conservatism back. And it's great to see them leave.
Yeah, it is. It is. And so we're just going to have to see, what happens at the RNC. I would rather see Harmeet Dillon and Lara Trump, personally.
Hmm.
That's who I would like to see. I know her, and I think that would be, but that's just my opinion. And I don't have a vote. Otherwise, I might, that might be where it would go. I don't know.
Well,
There's other people there, David Bossie's there. There's other people that could be the.
I suspect that whoever it is will be an improvement.
Well, I hope so. I'm seeing too, that some of the comments here, and so they're saying, no, 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 he's a rhino. Well, I don't know. I don't know anything about him.
Mhm.
Although, well, I won't say that. I don't know anything about him, and I just have to trust, Trump's judgment, because anything can happen, and there's more that he knows, and there is always more to the story, especially in
This is
politics.
true. This is true.
Yeah. So everybody, have a great night. Don, thank you so much for coming in, and everybody have a great night. We'll be back on Friday, and we may have a special guest with us. I'm not quite sure yet. So have a good week. And tomorrow is, we're at leap year, right? So tomorrow's the 29th. It only comes around every 4 years. Do whatever you want to do on that day.
Make it memorable.
Yeah, there you go. Good night,
Good night,
everybody.
everybody.